And we're live with Rich Pelletier today. Met Rich in 2013 at Shaw Air Force Base. We were both there at the same time, and there was a noticeable rift or hole or void in leadership development across the base. So Rich and I got together through a variety of recommendations and formed a leadership development council that was, I'm going to say, pretty shit hot. We did a lot of things around the base. I think pushed the ball down the field quite a bit. And then fast forward, when I was retiring, Rich was retiring about the same time, put me in touch with some folks at Amazon that allowed me to get a job, which was pretty amazing. And again, thank you for that. So Rich, I'm going to turn it over to you. Where are you at now? What you doing? How you doing?
Awesome. Thanks, Jake. Man, I really appreciate you taking the time to invite me to this opportunity to showcase how connections matter, and how maintaining connections really makes a difference to everyone's life. Retiring out of the military wasn't inevitable. But what was next wasn't. I was inquisitive, I was hungry, but I didn't know what my purpose was. And so all these opportunities came flooding me at the same time. And I had the unique opportunity to decide what did I want to do next. We'll maybe get into it a little later, but so now I work at Amazon. And it's a unique shift from leading teams that put explosive ordnance on aircraft and launch them into various environments to now I make sure that products meet their customer on time. But the most important part for me is the leadership piece of it all. There's so many opportunities at Amazon where you can bring in transferable skills from the military and how you led people to now how you develop people. It's rewarding. There's nuances behind these opportunities, but the intrinsic value that I get back from leading different teams that haven't grown in a military structure, but they're very diverse in education, opportunities, experiences. It really brings a sense of purpose. And so I go back to having a purpose from the military and being able to identify what my next purpose was, has kept me at Amazon. So I'm very proud of what I do. I'm proud that I haven't changed who I am from who I was. Obviously, our time together at Shaw, when we were developing leadership council, when we were showing leaders how to be better at their craft, to include officers,
Yes.
really allows me to be better at what I do now. So I thank, everyone around me for putting you and I in connection during that time in 2013, because it was that instant that allowed me to think deeper about how to be a leader and not just a manager of people.
And there are not enough. There are plenty of managers of people. There's not enough leaders of people. And the difference
Agreed.
in the two. I had the chance to break that down not too long ago and talked about the difference in the two. And one is you understand the process. You don't understand
Yep.
why the process happens and who makes the process happen. So thank you for that. And I'll throw a little plug in for PME, in which, we always talk about PME in the military and professional military education and how, it's just a pain in the butt and it really doesn't mean anything. But when you see the difference between folks that had just a smidge, just a touch of that, and then, in the civilian world where nobody's had any type of leadership training at all, it's a huge difference, a huge gap between the two.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember every PME we went to, for myself, I was I am not a public speaker. I don't enjoy it. I got nervous about it. So, the first time as a senior airman, you give you a 3 to 5 minute extemporaneous thing. I was okay, got that out of the way. And then in my head, I was I'll never do that again. But knowing that every few years when you promote, a new PME comes along and a new one, and then, going to chief leadership school, I was man, when do I stop talking to crowds? And then that's when it really blew up. I'm hey, can you speak at ALS? And I say that because now at Amazon, I don't have a problem. I don't fear it because I got past the significant part of I am being judged. And that was a part about public speaking that just didn't cripple me, but really made me fearful of doing it. And once I realized that, what? Everyone in the audience, they don't like public speaking either. And if they're judging you, you can't feel it. You can't see it. You just go out there and give your best. But PME made a difference. But at the time, I didn't appreciate it. But you said it right. After the fact, to know that I've gone I had gone through it, and seeing the difference in people that have never experienced that, there's a noticeable difference.
Yes. Yeah. And it's little things, but yeah, a very, very noticeable difference. Um, so I'd like you to take me back to the way long time ago and what motivated you to join the United States Air Force.
This is gonna be a funny one. So, Top Gun. Top Gun was the catalyst of me
Nice.
joining the Air Force. And I get it. Obviously it's a Navy movie, but it was all about the jets. It was all about the excitement, the adrenaline. And I was living in England at the time. It was 1993. I had graduated high school, gone to a business school, been placed in this company, much like Lowe's. And I was ascending through their positions pretty quickly. And one day it was just like man, I'd set myself a target of joining the military and I've done nothing about it. And so I'd gone home that day and I'd called up RAF Mildenhall and I said, hey, I'm a U.S. citizen. How do I join the Air Force? And so they gave me a rundown. Here's your age. Here's your requirements. This is the ASVABs, what we need to do. And I said, when can I do it? And right there on the phone, they said, hey, it's on this day. You just have to be here. I was like, I'll be there. I told my mom, and at the time I was 17, 17 and a quarter. And she said, well, what if I don't sign? I'm like, I love you. I appreciate it. But at 18, I'm going to do it. And she recognized that, this was something that I was passionate about. So went up to RAF Mildenhall and Lakenheath, which was kind of next door. Did my ASVABs and Master Sergeant McBurney. He was my recruiter at the time. He said, hey, if you'd like to, we'll put you up here in lodging. We'll give you a little bit of spending cash, stick around the base, and on Monday we'll know the results. So mom and dad left me there at the Air Force Base. They booked it south back to the house. And on Monday, he said, hey, congratulations, you passed ASVAB. And we're going to start doing the next process. So that was my initial step into it. And then it was March of 93 that I boarded a plane by myself, flew to the United States, landed at Texas, and that was it. That's where I started. And then, you get close to that first 4-year stint and you're like, okay, is this right? Is this not right? That's where I faced my first set of barriers in the military. I wasn't a model airman. I was living very vicariously. I was being influenced by people that maybe were fun friends, but maybe not the right friends. And so I had some very unique opportunities to face my commanders in my blues. I'd had numerous opportunities to put stripes on and then take stripes off, which put me significantly behind the curve of all the people of my peer group, we would say. And in 1996, I was in Georgia, and I was like, man, if I can get past this last hurdle, I'm going to re-enlist, and I'm going to be a better airman. And it worked out.
So
My
what was the drive to re-enlist? What made you want to stay?
To know I could be a better person. I recognized that my influences were the things that were taken away from me being a good airman. Mm-hmm. And I had to redefine what was important to me. Was it fun friends or was it the right friends? Right. And I had good friends on both sides of that conversation. And I recognized that my fun friends were going down a path that they didn't care what was next. Maybe they had opportunities back at home. Maybe they didn't understand the consequences. And so once I had made the decision to spend more time with the right friends and dabble with the fun friends, everything got a lot clearer for me. And it was when I was actually coming back from my second station, which was Spangdahlem in Germany, that my re-enlistment opportunity came up. And I was like, I'm doing this now because if not, I don't know what's next. And from that point, I was a better airman. Everything was, it wasn't easier, but it was easier for me to identify how to prioritize my decisions. Mm-hmm. Should I do this on a weekend? What am I going to be like on a Monday? And all these different things. And then it really came down to leaders taking noticed like, hey, this he's got potential. He can do something. Let's give him a little more to do. And then recognizing that, you know, with them giving me opportunities and me succeeding at it, man, now I started feeling really good about myself. So now I had a better look at like who I could be, not as an airman, but as a member of society, as a member within the military. And I'd never seen like the long game at that point. It like chief wasn't even on my radar. It wasn't a conversation. It was what can I do before this next enlistment? And I still hadn't decided if I was going to enlist a second time. But that was it. It was I can be a better person. I like being challenged and I like winning at stuff. And that's what allowed me to get to the next retirement.
So that second enlistment, that second re-enlistment, I should say. What was the reason there? You said you weren't really sure.
Yep.
But what pushed you over the edge? What kept you around?
Competition. I had a peer senior airman. He outranked me by a few months. He was at a previous station where I had been demoted. And he had seen me, and we were both in the same unit. He had been selected for a position in what's called weapons standardization, where you evaluate people loading aircraft. Mm-hmm. And I was like, man, like I know I'm good enough for that job. I should have got that. And so the next cycle, I was selected for the role, and I was on his team, so we were peers. And he was like, man, I'm going to make staff, and I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, well, I'm going to make staff too. And my boss was like, well, we need to re-enlist. I was like, good point. I'm going to re-enlist, then I'm going to make staff. He and I both made staff that cycle. He sewed on a few months before me. Fun fact is, some years down the road, when I was assigned at Shaw, he was already there. He was a tech sergeant. I had master select, and he didn't know it. And so I arrived. I was like, hey, Dustin, how you doing? It's great to see you again, blah, blah, blah. And the rivalry was still there. We were still competitive. And then he found out that I had a line number, and he was like, man, I don't know how you did it. But I told him, I was like, it's because every time I looked for opportunities, I found a way to make it competitive for myself. Who was the person around me that was better at something? How can I be like them? Was there a risk if I changed my tactics of something? So everything was a self-growth opportunity, but competition was absolutely what made me want to take the next step again.
I completely identify. I know where you're at. I completely identify and understand that. Wow. That's a good one. So let's fast forward. What was the impetus, as we were discussing earlier, and if you want to tell that story, that'd be great as well. What was the impetus for retirement?
I got to the point where I was getting farther and farther away from people and closer to policy and bureaucracy, mm-hmm. which is, it's good. You can make a difference. So I blessed ascended to the rank of chief through some really hard work of my own, but some really great recognition from chiefs and commanders along the way to say, hey, look, this guy, again, he's got something. I see the potential in him. Let's give him something, but let's also see what he does by himself. And that takes me back to like at Shaw, nobody gave me the leadership development stuff. That was a passion thing that, that I saw the opportunity for, and that when we were connected, and then we drove that, I took that to other bases, said, look, this works well. I can show you the empirical data of how people will improve by doing these courses or being vulnerable and understanding they're not the great leader, but they could be. Takes us back into when I was selected for chief, gone through my time, served as an AMU chief, which was a unique opportunity as a weapons guy. And then finally becoming, in the weapons field, being a weapons chief is the coup de grace. And I was selected for the weapons chief position here at Luke Air Force Base. And I was, blessed to serve the F-35 and the F-16 population, 4 different countries, helping them get on board with the F-35 program, working hand in hand with Lockheed Martin, and really making a difference in people's lives. And then while I was serving in Al Dhafra, the UAE, my wife had messaged me She was at a MXG event. She had been selected as a first sergeant a few years prior, so she was a diamond in the MXG. She said, "Hey, I just found out that you were stratified as a chief, and you're going to be selected as a command chief." And I was like, "Well, that's unique because no one has told me that at all." She's like, "Yeah, well, your group commander just told me." He addressed it with, "Hey, congratulations, you're going to be a command chief's wife." Obviously, didn't sit well with my spouse because she's like, "I'm not anybody's anything. I'm my own person," which I love to death.
Correct.
So I went through the rigmarole of the command chief selection process, the schools identified, and they're like, "Congratulations, you're going to be command chief." And I went through like kind of the waiting process. Went back to my gig as a wing weapons manager, and I can't remember the exact date, but I remember the exact time when Jennifer had already identified for her retirement date, and we were like, "Man, I really love this area in Phoenix. I think all the overseas deployments got me ready to like live in a hot, dry, sandy environment, so it felt naturally like home." And I said, "You know what? I don't think it's going to get any better than this. I'm going to retire." And so the very next day, I went in and I was getting ready to call my command chief at the time to let him know that I'd elected for retirement. So obviously pulling me from command chief candidacy. And he was like, "Rich, I was about to come see you." But interestingly enough, his office was a 2-minute walk away from my building. So he was like, "I was literally coming to see you to let you know that you've been selected for a command chief position down at Holloman Air Force Base." And I was like, "Okay, what does this mean?" He's like, "You know what? I'm going to respect your decision to tell me first, and we'll move on to another candidate." And then he supported my transition out. So the retirement was like knowing that I was in the right place at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt comfortable walking away knowing that I'd made a difference.
Mm-hmm.
But on the horizon, I was like, after you hit that button, you're like, was that the right thing to do? Knowing that you can always take it back until like day X.
Right.
But I never felt like I made the wrong choice. I didn't feel like I was letting anybody down on the team. I knew my wife was excited for it. We had a young daughter. Our son was already 2.5 years old at the time. I was like, you know what? It's going to be great not moving around the world for the next X amount of years, and then actually having a place that we can call home and have roots, because we'd moved every 3 or 4 years with the military. So that was the impetus of my selection to decide to retire. And then retirement was unique. It was COVID. And I remember I'd called my commander at the time from Shaw Air Force Base, Leah Fry. I said, "Ma'am, I'm getting retired. You have been the most impactful commander or officer in my life. Would you do me the honor of being my official?" And she was like, "Absolutely." And so we've gone through all the planning phases. And one day she had sent me an email, say, "Hey, I'm not sure if you're tracking to the risk right now of international travel, but this COVID thing is putting a lot of fear on a lot of radars." And I was like, "Yeah, I know, thinking about that." My mom, my sister, everybody still lived in England, so that was going to be a concern. And then a couple weeks later, it was like, boom, cease all travel.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, we're like, "Oh man, I'm not having a retirement." And I didn't. I walked into NPS. I did all my paperwork. They walked me over to essentially what is a closet. I signed out and I walked away. So I didn't close the chapter in a conventional sense, but I didn't feel let down. There wasn't any pomp and circumstance, which I appreciated. It was just when I walked away and I drove away, I knew I did enough. I didn't need hey, here's a retirement speech, here's all the flowers, and here's the flag and stuff. Like, yeah, I missed out on it, but
At that time, I don't think you did, because I did mine during that time, and it was
okay.
me and a proffer and the commander in an auditorium.
Mm.
And I was talking to a
Yeah.
camera. And the only reason I did it was because my kids couldn't be there, and I wanted them to one day be able to see it. So
Yeah, you're right.
it was not, although it was there, it was not the closure that you would normally get. It was not the celebration of the end. So I don't think you missed anything. Thanks to COVID, it was a very, very awkward time for all to be, for all.
It's like you have retirement with an asterisk at the top.
Yeah.
These are the chiefs that retired at COVID.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So when you decided, had you done any preparation for the next chapter, or had you decided and then made the decision, then started preparation?
I started my LinkedIn journey August 13th of 2016. And I don't remember why. It wasn't the next MySpace or Facebook and then LinkedIn. It was just I really wish I could remember like why I joined LinkedIn. But anyway, I have to look back at it. My first conversation and who it was with. And it was like, hey, congratulations on whatever it was. Then as I was transitioning, I'd always kept up with LinkedIn and made comments. And there's a lot of great information on LinkedIn that was relevant to my military career. I'm like, oh, that's a really great philosophy to carry. Oh, that's a really great slogan to use for what I want to talk about. And then in 2019, I started like amplifying my game in there, like making meaningful connections with people. And then honestly, LinkedIn is what got me into my Amazon journey. It's what got me into my other opportunity. Excuse me. Preparation for me was how to identify my next purpose. Like in the military, we have a purpose. Like, and whether your purpose was to serve a greater calling, whether it was to be the lead of an organization, whether it was to be the person that followed in your family's lineage, everybody has a purpose. Mm-hmm. And I was told that I need to identify mine. And then again, when I was on the transition out, a captain who was at Shaw with us said, well, Rich, what kept you in the military? Like, what made you passionate about staying for 27 years? And it was a question that I wasn't prepared for because I was like, I don't know. And he's like, I tell you what, identify why you stayed around for so long, what you're most proud of, and I bet you that's going to take you into your next thing. And then so I did some of that soul searching, and I was like, man, it always came back to the people thing. Like, whether I was a junior enlisted, a senior enlisted, whether I was a peer or something, I was put in front of a person or a person was put on my team. And I can see that like they could have been successful, but I know that they were successful because we crossed paths. And I was like, man, that's what I need. He's like, perfect. Find an opportunity where you are involved with people, you can identify potential, and you can do something about it. So that opened my aperture for a lot of opportunities. So Amazon came my way, a pharmaceutical company came my way, an aviation red air company came my way by way of one of our peer chiefs. And it was the transition of like identifying my next purpose is what made everything, gave everything a little more clarity for me. Because now I wasn't just like throwing a net out there. I could like start targeting what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And then as I was going through that retirement journey, those connections I was making, like they had to mean something. Like, hey, I want to introduce myself. My name is Rich. I'm retiring from the military. I have some real passion for, X, Y, and Z. I see your company does this. What are some successful measures you take? And I made like honest, genuine connections. And they proved beneficial, not for a role, but they were putting me in touch with other people who had like philosophies of leadership and development. And that's what helped me like really spur my next step, which was as I made my next move, bring people with me, share what I'm learning. Don't be afraid to say, hey, you know what? I don't know what that is, but let me get back to you next week and I'll share what I find out. And so preparation came in the form of circumstance from 2016, jumping into LinkedIn, going through TAPS, already having LinkedIn, already knowing connections, and then using the tools at my disposal, which was connection methodology, making sure that I don't connect with somebody because I want something, connect with people because I know that it's mutually beneficial.
Right.
So
right.
Hopefully that answers your question, sir.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So in your, it sounded like you and Jennifer retired at almost the same time, pretty close to the same time.
Yeah, she was 6 months ahead of me. And what I loved about it is that she did a joint retirement with her best friend, who was also previously intelligence, who had also been selected to be a first sergeant at the same time. We had been essentially couples best friends since North Carolina, a few years before we were stationed at Shaw, and we just kind of all like moved into very similar circles. And so all their family, all their clan came out to Loop. They did a joint retirement. They had one of their previous commanders do it. And so I think maybe because when I retired after her and I didn't have that, I still experienced it.
Right.
You know, because I was still in my uniform, was still there. You celebrate everybody in retirement. You don't just celebrate the retiree. So maybe I got a little bit of that when she retired. But yeah, having her retire before me, she's like, I don't want to do anything that takes me away from the kids. And so she chose to retire and step into being a full-time mom, which huge reward for her. It's like she loves it. And she continues to love it, even though our kids now are 8 and 10.
So what did your mental picture, what did your impression, what did you think it was going to be like when you retired? What was your kind of your expectation of that whole other side?
I bought into what everybody else said, which was, man, it's difficult out there. There's so much talent. You got to know the person to get the job. Like I fell into that at first. But then, you know, I kind of stepped, and there's been this running joke with people that have known me that I'm the guy who boarded a unicorn, rode over a rainbow, and landed in a field of 4-leaf clovers, because they're like, how did you get those job offers at the same time, going through a competitive field of candidates and being recognized as the best person for the role? And I'm like, honestly, I think it was how I carried myself, how I postured during interviews, being conversational and not just straight analytic and just answering the question, but truly being a genuine person that says, look, I'm interested in this role. I'm interested in your company. These are the things that I don't have, but I do a really good job of learning how to be better at what I do. And I cited examples. And when I recognized that, yes, connections matter, but being who you are and being comfortable saying, this is what I'm good at, this is what I'm not, really carried me a long way. And it continues to do to this day, like as I progress through my Amazon journey. But it's true. There is a lot of competition as you retire from the military, but you should also recognize that you bring so many transferable skills that they're not on a job posting. Joining Amazon and recognizing that, yeah, I couldn't do the data analytics like they wanted to right away, but there were 30 leaders in front of me that couldn't actually lead a team. All they could do is run a checklist. Like, well, I told you to do it this way. Why didn't you? Like, well, you've got to be more ambiguous. You have to give them the opportunity to like learn how to do that. And if they fail, you have to support them, because if they fail once and you reprimand them, that's it. They're never going to try again. And you've just stymied their growth and your potential to develop a greater leader. So going back to being comfortable knowing that how everyone else around you transitions isn't how you have to transition. Like, it is your journey to prepare for. And it can't start when you hit the button. Like, it's inevitable. You are going to retire. At the end of this walk of life, you are going to die. So, like, it's an inevitable thing. You're not going to work forever, but you own your plan.
So throughout the transition, what would you say? What would you say the biggest thing you learned, or biggest lessons for you or your family during the transition process?
The first one for me was understanding being scared or anxious is okay, because it's unknown. You can't prepare for the unknown, because by nature, that's what it's for. The first thing was knowing that I was going to be okay. And not because, like, you know, we'd had a retirement or anything like that, but opportunities were always going to come in your direction. If you choose to accept them, another opportunity will present itself, whatever that role would be. The next thing was that to not over-index on the job search or what was next because it would be at the sacrifice of my mental health and my family's well-being. I had to actually enjoy. I don't know about enjoy. I had to recognize the process. Like it's not fluid. It was going to be a rush and a withdrawal, and it's going to be up and a down. When I was going through the retirement transition, and like we mentioned, it was COVID. I still did the path. I still did the Skills Bridge program,
Mm-hmm.
and I did it at a company called Anderson Windows. They had just launched a warehouse 5 minutes from my house. Beautiful looking building. And so I reached out to a hiring manager who coincidentally I had made a strong connection with at a hiring event at Luke Air Force Base. I was like, hey, I'm retiring soon. I see your company is located at this location close to my house. I'm interested in your vision, business, and business statements, blah, blah, blah. He gave me his card. When I was going through SkillBridge, I reached out to him directly. He was a business recruiter. And he's like, hey, you know what? I've never heard of SkillBridge. Tell me more about it. And I started peddling the SkillBridge information. I went through all the paperwork, got it signed, and they offered me a SkillBridge internship. I went and worked for that company, and it was COVID. Their manufacturing process and machinery was in Germany. So at the last week, I'd already met with the vice president, and he's like, Rich, this is a unique thing for me to say is, I don't know what role to put you in, but we have to have you. He's like, the people around you are so connected with what you talk about and how you motivate them, inspire them to do other things that their productivity has increased. He's like, and I can't identify how you did it, but I know I need more of it. And as I said, I'd love to stay here, blah, blah, blah. He's like, however, we cannot launch our operation because everything is going to get delayed because of international halt from all this Germany stuff. He's like, but I really wish we could. I was like, no hard feelings. I appreciate it. Part on great ways. About a year and a half down the road, they were like, hey, we're up and running. We need you. And I was already with Amazon at the time. I think I segued away from my conversation. I apologize.
No.
Remind me what the question was because I'm off tangent.
What'd you learn? You were going down the learning road.
Yep. And so, yeah, making the connections along the way. Just happened to make the right connection at the hiring fair at Luke Air Force Base and making those connections along the way. And I said it before, making a genuine conversation or a connection so that when you reach out to somebody, they're like, oh, I remember that guy. So, like, it's not just a blind connection. Like, have something meaningful inside of it.
Right.
So those are the two biggest things for me. And then understanding that, yeah, you can put a lot of, you can, what's the word I'm looking for? You can apply for a lot of jobs and you can fire a lot of resumes out there. But the more you do it, I feel like the more demoralized you would become because then you're like, oh, I fired out 100 resumes. No one's responding to me. And then you're like, okay, is it good enough? Do I need to change it? Am I looking in the right places? What am I doing wrong? And then self-doubt creeps in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I didn't apply for any jobs when I retired. Not a single one. LinkedIn was the first connection. A guy reached out and said, hey, I see the things you're talking about on LinkedIn. Why don't you take a look at Amazon? And at first I was like, I don't do retail. But I was like, you know what? Let me go read the leadership principles at the time. And at the time there were 14, they resonated. I'm like, man, these make sense. Like I've been doing this stuff and a lot of the leadership principles are the things that I was good at and I appreciated. At the same time, a peer a master sergeant who had retired from Luke Air Force Base that he worked for me. And he said, hey, my company's looking for this new entity. I'd like to nominate you. I was like, yeah, absolutely, Paul. I'd be happy to work with you on this team. So I went through an informal interview process with them. There were 246 candidates who had applied. The hiring manager asked me to apply, so I did apply to that one. I went for an in-person interview. Know nothing about pharmaceutical industry. Know nothing about DEA and stuff. but I spoke about how I had led through policy and changes, understand like governmental regulations and oversight. And they were like, I think it was the same day Amazon said, hey, we want to hire you. They said, hey, we want to hire you. And it was the same thing. They were like, you have things that other people don't have right now, and we can teach you pharmaceutical, and we can teach you control mechanisms for DEA. But the other things we can't teach you. And that's going back to what you and I talked about. PME taught us things that we didn't know we were going to use later in life. And that takes me back to that message. Like, we all have so many transferable skills that we don't recognize it right now. So like podcasts like this, when we're champion, like, you make a difference. The things you have learned are valuable outside of the military. Sometimes you need to tweak how you're saying it, but it always comes down to you're being genuine to what you're doing, and you're finding yourself that you want to land in your purpose area. So like going back to like those are my three things that I paid attention to while I was making my transition, and some of my learning points that I would share with teams.
So when you were transitioning, what was your number one focus during the transition process? Was the job the thing you were focused on most? What was your primary focus?
I don't know if it was a job. I would say I'd identified my purpose, after talking to the captain, and I needed to find a place that met my intrinsic needs, which was to be of value to a team. So it didn't matter. It didn't matter what company that was. It didn't matter what role. I absolutely undersold myself, and I didn't appreciate the level of experience that I brought to corporate America. When I interviewed at Amazon, when I interviewed at Amazon, I applied for what is a L5 area manager role. It was the ground floor. And when I was talking to the guy who introduced me to Amazon, he was like, yeah, he's like, man, he's like, L5 is probably the right spot. Learn from inside, promote to L6, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, hey, Gary, thank you so much. Like, I appreciate it. And he helped me with some some terminology, and then with how I was going to tell my story. And I applied for the role. There were 4 interviewers, 45 minutes each. Afterwards, I got off. I found them on LinkedIn because I wasn't part of the Amazon network yet. And I said, hey, you know what? I really want to thank you for the time you took to interview me. I appreciated this. Questions were challenging, but I appreciate the very conversational approach you took to it. One was a process engineer who was very data analytics, mathematically inclined. The other one was, it would have been an L7, a senior operations manager on another site. One was PXT, and one was a site leader. Come to find out, all 4 of them said, this is not the right fit for an L5 job. This is an L6 leader. And so my recruiter reached out and said, hey, look, team really loved you. Would you be willing to take an L6 interview instead? I was like, hey, absolutely. Reached out to my friend Gary, say, hey, man, the pod pushed me forward to L6. He's like, that's impressive, because at this time there had been I think he said it was like a 28% L6 direct hire from external. The next leader they had organized was an L7 site lead. And it was a 1-person interview. So I got one shot of this. And Steve started an introduction. He said, Rich, I want to know from you, how do you take a person, and let's say it's a tier 1 associate, how do you make them a manager? How do you transition that manager into a leader? And then how do you go about making a leader of leaders? And I was like, man, this guy jumped into my psyche, asked me the moneymaker question that I am explicitly passionate about. And it was a 45-minute interview. For 1 hour, we spoke about growth development, opportunity of strategy of development, and all this stuff. And afterwards, he hit me up on LinkedIn. He's like, you're good. So I knew something was coming my way. And it was great. But all the other roles, they were just people reaching out to me. Because I wanted to make sure that that I knew what I was going to get into. And so I recognized where my passion space was. I knew what my opportunities were. I wanted to stay localized to Phoenix, but I didn't have a company I wanted to work for.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know the role I wanted, but I knew the opportunities I wanted within those roles. And that's kind of how I did it. When the aviation opportunity came my way, a chief was like, "Hey, reach out to this chief at Luke Air Force Base. He's getting ready to retire. He has ran an aviation unit. He has connections in Phoenix because obviously Lockheed Martin was right here and all the other countries. He's your right candidate." So I had a retired general reach out, said, "Hey, this is what we want to do. We want to launch it in Phoenix. We heard you're the guy." And I started asking questions. He's like, "This is where it's at. It's currently in congressional review and approval. We're just waiting for the thumbs up." And it sounded great. And my wife said, "Is that what you want to do?" I said, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Do you want to stay in aviation and run an organization like that?" And when she asked me that question, I was like, I don't. Like, I want to do something different.
Mm-hmm.
And so on the next call schedule, I said, "You know what? I really want to thank you guys for giving me that opportunity, but I'm going to pass." I'm like, "But here are 3 candidates that I think would excel in this opportunity." And all were retiring chiefs with 2A3 or crew chief backgrounds that would absolutely crush it. Coincidentally, all 3 of those chiefs went to go work for Lockheed Martin in the F-35 program because it was familiar. So there again, like stepping away from something that is familiar and getting uncomfortable.
So it sounds like you discovered your purpose. You knew what you wanted to do. You made connections. Jobs were coming your way. Was discovering your purpose the most challenging part, or was there a challenge in the transition, maybe taking off the uniform, figuring out who you are, a challenge during the transition? And we can call the transition from retirement to now, because I don't know about you, but I still go back and forth, and there's still things that I'm learning about that I've lost since the Air Force until now. So what was the biggest challenge? What was the thing that if you look back on it, go, man, that was the thing?
I would have to say it was purpose. Like, I had to find my next purpose. And it's difficult because, like, we were from the maintenance group.
Mm-hmm.
Like, my purpose isn't going out to lead a PML team at the aviation company. Like, that wasn't my purpose. That wasn't my purpose in the military, right? Like, you leading PML, me leading weapons troops, like, that wasn't my purpose. So you had to really, like, draw everything back or peel it back and be like, all right, well, if I was the team lead of this, my purpose was to do what? Well, my purpose was to grow that person to take my role so I could go help my boss do their role. And then every time I looked, I was like, hang on, my purpose has always been to make sure that my team is strong enough to do things without me, that my organization is strong enough to do things when I'm gone. Because, again, inevitably, we're always going to be gone from a team or organization. It doesn't matter what it is. We have the adage where you leave it better than you found it, which is true. You should. I mean, if you get thrown into a dumpster fire, you got to extinguish the flames and rebuild it, which was kind of the joke of when I was asked to go run an aviation unit. Hey, can you lead this unit? In my head, I'm like, I don't know. Like, the people before me haven't led it. Like, how can I be successul? It goes back to that previous. Yeah, exactly. But it goes back to that previous question where I felt like I wasn't good enough, or maybe I had a little bit of imposter syndrome where, like, oh, like, why did they pick me? Like, can I do it? Do they see something? Like, am I really going to do it? Am I going to be successful? Finding the purpose was the most important part. Because, like, being part of the United States Air Force and the U.S. military it's huge. Like, you make a difference. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't always see it when we talk about dime, but you make a difference. Like, I think of all the times that that I deployed somewhere that you helped a troop who'd never deployed before, or you help calm the nerves of their spouse, or you see them with their kids when they leave, and you put your shoulder, hey man, it's going to be okay. Your family's going to be good. I'll take care of you. The people behind, they'll take care of them. You don't have that in corporate America, and depending what role you're in. So purpose was the defining moment of me knowing that this is what my journey's got to be about. And even today, like being at Amazon, like the roles are very unique at Amazon, but you still have to identify a purpose. And your purpose isn't like, well, I'm the senior ops. Oh, I'm the general manager. Like that's a title. That's the role and responsibility. It's not a purpose. Once you've identified your purpose, then you need to identify, and it's funny, we go back to Maslow hierarchy of needs, like what are the things that you have to have? And for me, like I had to have a job that gave me personal satisfaction, knowing that when I came in and when I left, I made a difference. If I'm just a number, hey, I'm going to lose number 47. Perfect. Number 48, you're up. I needed to set myself apart. And so identifying the purpose, my personal needs for the role and satisfaction. And then is it something that I could see, not a growth trajectory as far as promotions, but a growth trajectory for myself? Like, am I going to grow in that role? Will I learn new skills? Will I be better at something? So those would be my three things, honestly. But
one of the things that a buddy of mine articulated very well was, for the duration of your time in service, we talk about service and we talk about serving people. We talk about serving the Air Force. We talk about serving the nation. And then he mentioned that when retiring, you just take that service and you put it in a box and you put it away, and service doesn't matter anymore. And for him, and I identify with it very well, it's a piece that was very important to us that's just not there. So how do you fill that? How do you find that? How do you serve? How do it's part of purpose. Sure, your purpose is in there as well, but the service element, the difference between launching airplanes and making sure a package goes to a customer is not quite the same level of importance. You don't take maybe it's the same amount of pride in it, the same amount of love, I would think. How do you deal with, or how have you filled up that? Have you filled up that sense of service?
I have, and this is how. While serving our airmen, our service itself, our country, I had a thing to do. A team relied on me to do one thing. I have replaced my service with role modeling. So I am a role model for my children to be a good human being. I'm a role model for the children or their peers that in the karate school. When we go to national tournaments, I'm the dad that is rooting on the other kids. The kids feel comfortable coming up to me and asking questions about, like, what did I score? What place am I in? Like, I don't serve our nation, but I serve the greater core of being a good human being. And it's right for me because I know that when my kids do something right, it's because they're following the right people. They're doing the right things. So it's the service I bring to them. And while us saying like serving is the metaphor of service, it's being of service to others. And that's kind of how I filled it. So hopefully there's other people that it'll click for them and like, oh, you're right. Like I don't have to be in a uniform. I don't have to serve a country, but I have to be a service to other people. The simple things you do. When I watch my 8-year-old girl open the door for other people going into a building or something like that, and I recognize that she got that from me or other people. But then I'll see other grown-ups that don't do those things. And are they setting the right example? Are they serving the greater good? Like, I don't know, but I find my service in helping others for sure. And then same thing like you, like helping people on calls, doing interviews, motivating people, like that's a service. And so like you don't get financial repayment. You don't get anything out of helping in an interview, helping on a call, helping a friend. Like it, it's personal, and it makes you feel good knowing that you made a difference. And so that's kind of where I put all my service at.
So for you, it's a much more personal service as opposed to the larger, we all wear the same uniform kind of service. It's a much more personal projection of service.
Yeah, absolutely. I miss serving the U.S. military. Mm-hmm. But earlier on I said everything comes to an end. Like when I got done serving, did I put enough time, energy, passion, trust into the other airmen, the other NCO, the other senior, the other chief, the other officers to know I made a difference? And reflecting back, I did. I put a lot of time and effort into the growth of other people, to know that while I don't wear the uniform, my mark, my ripple effects continue to serve. So like, when people post about, hey, I just got promoted, and you're like, oh my Lord, like I remember when that person was an E3, or I remember when that person was like a brand new lieutenant. And then like on the side, they're like Rich, or they're still like Chief. Like, thank you so much. Like, I remember the day you said X, Y, and Z to me. That stuck, and that made a difference. And so that's a reminder that I don't wear the uniform, but in some measure, and this might be goofy, but I continue to serve in those capacities because you made a difference, just like you did.
Mm-hmm. The success of other people is something that I rarely take credit for, but really, really enjoy watching.
Yeah.
And it's, if there was a difference made in there somewhere, fantastic. Very happy to have done anything for you that I could.
Yeah. But you don't take credit for it, right? You're not like, hey, you never would have got there without me.
That. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's the, you know what? I'm so glad that our paths crossed to allow you to hear that message, change your approach on something, to do this, right? Like, I guarantee, like, if you and I, if our paths hadn't have crossed, I can probably think of 5 to 10 instances where I wouldn't have given a certain speech. I wouldn't have shared a book. I wouldn't have shared a quote from Simon Sinek. Yeah. Like, my journey was probably enriched because of various connections across the military. One being with you through career assistance advisor stuff, and then getting that team together. Like the team that we compiled, like everybody was there because not because like, oh, I'm going to get promoted out of this. It was like I want to be on that team because I believe in what's being sold and I know how to make it my own statement.
And I would, going back to your helping people, there's never been a time that you've had a conversation or worked with somebody, or in my experience that I've helped somebody through something, even something small, in which selfishly I didn't grow as well because I had to think about things differently. I had to explain it in a different manner. I had to, their understanding of the situation challenged my understanding of the situation to go, how did you get to that?
Yeah.
And how are we going to help you work through that? So there's even if you don't, to your earlier point, you don't jump into somebody's comments or jump up and say, I made that thing happen. I like to look at those people that are succeeding and go, man, you taught me probably more than I taught you. There's a good chance that in that scenario, I learned more in that scenario than you did. And very thankful to have those people, to have those experiences.
I remember, actually, while I was at Luke, I had a junior NCO fail a PT test. And it was a very weird situation from the PT test team. I can't remember what they're called, FACS. Mm-hmm. It was when we still had the civilian ran team. And he had failed the PT test. He was coming up on EPR. And so obviously that was detrimental. I was wing weapons manager. So I didn't directly supervise this candidate, but he was this airman, but he was in my reporting chain. And so I was made aware of the situation. I didn't have a personal connection to the Airmen at all. I recognized the situation was not good. So I went to a group commander because the squadron commander wasn't interested in the story at all. He's like, look, he failed. A fail is these are the consequences.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So he wouldn't have been allowed to re-enlist. No, it was a two EPR, whatever, referral EPR. Yeah, exactly. And so I went to the group commander after the squadron commander wasn't willing to listen to my position. I said, look, this is the position and this is why. And I wouldn't let it go, which ties into Amazon's leadership principle of have backbone, disagree, and commit. I was having backbone. I said, look, this is unjust. This is a civilian employee who did not perform their role as expected, didn't do the things they were supposed to do, that is going to have a negative consequence on an airman's life. I think we should do this. And then he said, okay, I'll listen to you. Plead your case of why. And I did. And he's like, you know what? Yeah, I'm on board. You're right. Like, this is an instance where we need to take a different approach to a situation. It's not all these grapes are purple and I'm going to make them all into purple wine. I'm going to do something different. And he did. He advocated, reached back out to the squadron commander, had a different conversation, and then had an all call with all squadron commanders to say, look, every situation will be treated individually versus everybody gets the same output. That's one of those times where I learned a lot from the commander. He spoke to me as a peer, which I appreciated. And I also learned a lot about other officers, about how they're not willing to listen to a senior enlisted leader. They're like, I'm an officer. I make the decision. I'm like, I get it. I'm trying to provide you with all the right information to make an informed decision that could potentially have dire consequences to the life of one human being. And I say all that because that human being reached out to me through LinkedIn about a month and a half ago and said, Chief, I'm a master sergeant. And he's like, and I wouldn't be if you didn't fight for me for this. And so, and his wife had, she had reached out after the event itself, and she said, you know what, Chief, I've never seen somebody fight for an airman as hard as you do. And it wasn't that one instance, like it was other people that I believe that they need somebody on their side. And that's the same thing as transition. You need somebody on your side. You know, whether you think you have all the knowledge, all the capabilities, the best resume ever, all the right college education, you need somebody on your side to help you, to have a conversation, to remind you that, hey, guess what? We are all great at what we do. We could be better. We can learn from the people below, beside, and above us. But ultimately, you're never going to do it alone.
No. And I'd like to add to that you need somebody that's going to be your cheerleader, but an honest cheerleader.
Yeah.
So there's lots of people that will tell you that you can do everything and everything's going to be fine. But to have somebody that's willing to go, hey, man, you're wrong. And tell you why you're wrong, I think is invaluable. So last question for you. What advice would you give yourself prior to retirement now? So rich now, prior to retirement rich, what advice would you give yourself that you think would make a difference in that situation, or that somebody else could benefit from if they were in Rich's shoes?
When you reflect on your decisions, don't worry about the what if. When you are transitioning out, don't get caught up in the, did I make the right choice? Like, because when you're asking yourself, is it time to retire? It is time to retire. You don't ask yourself that question if you're like, man, I am crushing, I'm making a huge difference, I'm on my way to this, whatever else it is. Like, there's a catalyst in your life or in your military career that says, ooh, is now the time. And it's the same advice I've given to everybody else who's ever asked me. If you have just asked me this question, it is the time. And I'm here to help you on the next question you're about to ask me, which is, how do I do this? If I had to go back to 2019 before I hit that button, I would say to Rich, make sure you've put all your what ifs to bed, that you have nothing else personally left to accomplish that wouldn't be at the sacrifice of your family. Like if I had said, you know what, I'm not going to retire. I am going to take this command chief gig, and I'm going to be, a command chief. It's a position, it's an opportunity, it's bureaucracy, it's policy, and it's less. Yes, you are leading, or you're advising the installation commander on the health and welfare of the enlisted force and everyone else, but it's not leading people. It's really not. You make a big impact. Like I've seen my peers who are all my same command chief graduating class. They're all leading at the number Air Force level and greater, and they're doing amazing things. And their family is so excited to be traveling with them, whatever age their kids are, and they're having a great time doing it. I don't reflect on like, should I have done it? Mm-hmm. Not one instance. I'm proud of the decision I made, and I'm proud of the people that continue to serve in that role, in that capacity. But I'm whispering in the ear of Rich Pelletier is like, don't think about what you can't do because you're retiring. Think about the things you will do because you're retiring.
I like that. Well, Rich, I really, really appreciate the time. It's been fantastic talking to you again. And really, really thank you very much for the time.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. Like, the more hearts, minds, and ears you can reach by doing this kind of stuff, you will make a impression categorically across many lives. Whether it's military members, it's friends, people from other industries. Like, we can't do enough of this to let people know that we've done it before you. It will be okay, but allow somebody to help you along your journey. Like, join a phone call, join a conversation, ask a question, but never try to like model from somebody else's journey or do it alone.
Well, thank you very much, sir. And great words to end on.
Have a great day. Aim high. You're good.